Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Thanks for stopping by for another quick video. I wanted to start off by talking about Tom Hanks's skit in SNL this past week. Am I saying it right? Tom Hanks? I always get confused when there's a S at the end of a name. But for the sake of the show, I'll just say Tom Hanks. Okay. Anyway, the skit itself, I didn't think was that bad, but it's obviously grabbed a lot of people's attention. It's got a lot of people riled up, and even some um, people that I never would have thought would react so strongly had some pretty scathing remarks about it. And me personally, I know I don't like to get offended pretty quickly. I don't like giving people that satisfaction, but also it's a skit, it's a satire, if you will. I don't see SNL as a very serious show, so a lot of what they say, is meant to push buttons, is meant to cause people to laugh at themselves or even at their neighbor. But it's all part of comedy. I feel like I do tend to give comedians and actors that bit of a gray area to work in, because if you don't, then what kind of material are they going to come up with? You're really end up stifling comedy, and I don't think that would be fair. What I don't enjoy is, let's say the roles were reversed and the script was flipped, and it was maybe an outspoken conservative that was involved in the skit, and he played a progressive, and had certain little quirks and things like that to trigger the left. How would they react? And I think that if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So as long as it's fair, I have no issue with it. But as we know, Tom Hanks is pretty outspoken Trump hater. SNL itself is pretty liberal, mainly because of how many people that work there are also liberal. It's filmed in New York, so I can see why there's a bit of I don't want to say outrage, but there's a reason why certain Republicans are upset about it, because it just seems like it's all stacked up against the Republicans, or the MAGA Republicans. Take it for what it's worth. I hope it was just a skit, and they can move on forward. I don't think it has to be that big of a deal. I think the more that we talk about it, and the more it's on these media outlets, it's gonna end up being worse for everyone. We're gonna make it into a really big issue when it doesn't really have to be. Next, I wanted to touch on that press briefing that Trump had down in Mar-a-Lago earlier this week, where he started to talk about the different age groups of people that were still in the Social Security Administration database and were potentially still receiving checks, even though they were upwards of 360 years old. This was, of course, just one example, but I mean, guys, this person would have been born in 1665. He would have been 270 years old when the Social Security Administration was founded back in 1935. So, how did they end up in the database to begin with? It's just an example of this abuse and fraud that's been going on. And these findings are pretty damning. Why? Well, because as a taxpayer, I'm like, where's my money? You can't tell me where my money's going. You can't ensure that my money is going to the right hands. And as someone who gets up and goes to work, I work 12-hour shifts at the hospital, and there's a little bit of risk that's involved, getting sick, getting exposed to all kinds of stuff that really sometimes you don't know. But my job physically isn't very demanding. I think about the firefighters, the law enforcement that goes out and puts their life on the line. These guys at the oil rigs, construction workers, all exposed to the elements outside. You're telling me that this administration didn't, the Social Security Administration didn't care enough to track where all these people's tax money is going? That's pretty disheartening, when you hear it in those terms, right? So some of the groups, he started off with 90 to 99 years old and 100 109 years old. Working in the hospital, I still see geriatric patients, upwards of 102 come in somewhat regularly. Not too often, but it's not that much of a surprise for me anymore. I think the oldest I've seen personally is 104, if I'm correct, but none after that. So what I wanted to do is do some quick math and talk about these uh, age groups, and I decided to leave off the 90s to 99, and then the 100-year-olds to the 109-year-olds, and I left off also 160-year-olds all the way to 360 because those numbers kind of dropped off as they got older and older, thankfully. I'm focusing just on the 120 to 150-year-old age groups, and I kind of rounded them off just again for sake of this exercise, just to make it a little more simple for myself. These age groups, the 120-year-olds, they were made up of about 3 million people. There was 3 million and some change. Same with the 130, 140-year-olds. They were 3 million and some change. I went ahead and just leveled them off at 3 million. And then the 150-year-olds were a million and some change. And so again, leveled them off at just a million, which gives us a total of about 10 million people that were part of this 120 to 150-year-old age group. I wanted to calculate about how much money we would have wasted, if they continue to, pay these checks to these people. And I wanted to, again, make it easier for myself. So I said, like, what if they just started receiving their payments at age 65? All of them, okay, across the board. Well, the 120-year-olds would have turned 65 at in the 1970s, right in 1970, I should say. And the rate back then was about $123.82. Let's go ahead and just let's fix that rate for the rest of their lives. I know it's not what it actually happens, but again, for the sake of this exercise and to keep it simple, we'll fix it right there at 123.82. And what we're going to do is multiply by 12 and then 55 years of payments, because that's how much they would have gotten paid out up until this year, right? And then their age group was 3 million people. That gives us a total of $245 billion, guys. How about the 150-year-olds? The 150-year-olds would have turned 65 in 1940, which is when the very first checks were paid out. This was at a rate of $22.71 per month. Again, let's lock that in. They're fixed for the rest of their lives. And we come up with $23 billion. Now, I guess in hindsight, saying these numbers out loud isn't anything like shocking. It's not huge. But when you think about the fact that a lot of this money shouldn't have gotten paid out in the first place, that's what makes it a big deal. I want to believe that some of these people did receive benefits while they were alive and they were able to use them appropriately. But who's to say that they didn't die at age 66 and then, received, X amount of years of these checks? Who got those checks? Where did they go? And why were they still sent out? For the groups that are 160 and up, I mean, come on, no one's alive past 110. If they are, like I think Trump was saying, they need to be on the news. We need to ask them what's the secret. Because otherwise, these people have been dead for years, decades, and someone is collecting their checks, or their checks are just being stowed away somewhere. For to what end? I want to know where my tax money is, where it's going to, and the purpose, right? All I hope is that information like this, whether you've already heard it, whether you've heard it from different people, or if I'm the first person that you heard it from, I hope that it shakes people out of apathy and that you can start really wanting to know what's going on in the government, what's going on with your money. I mean, why wouldn't you want to know where your money is going and how it's being used? In regards to the Social Security payments and what rates were being paid at what years, I'll post a link. I got it off of Info Please, but they had a table that you can check out just for your own curiosity. I am going to be trying to do one more video this week, and so I hope that today, you're able to enjoy this video. I hope you take care, enjoy this Friday, enjoy the weekend, and I'll catch you on the next video.